It just tells us that, what we already know to be true, which is that for so many prospective students, cost is the most important thing that they're looking for. What that means is, how is that presented on your site?
This is The Application, where higher ed enrollment strategy gets tactical. I'm Allison Turcio, marketer, curious question asker, and your guide through what's next and what's working in higher ed. Join us as we focus on what really matters, connecting with students and parents in more human, personalized ways, and using tools like AI to make that connection scalable and smart. From rethinking your inquiry campaigns to fixing funnel friction, everything we cover is about creating better experiences for students and better results for your team. Whether you lead the team, recruit the students, build the campaigns, or manage the message, you'll walk away from every episode with something you can use right now. Are you ready to get one step closer to your next enrollment win? Let's go.
When a student lands on your website, what do they want to do? Not what you think they want to do. What do they actually want to accomplish? Today's guests have real data to answer that question. I'm joined by Grant DeRue, founder of ADV Market Research, and Jarrett Smith, Senior VP of Strategy at Echo Delta. Together, they surveyed over 1,000 prospective students using a top tests methodology to uncover the highest priority website actions related to admissions, financial aid, and academic programs. A little spoiler alert that I don't think will surprise anybody who listens to the show often. Cost dominates, but there's a lot more complexity to that we're going to get into. You all surveyed over 1,000 prospective students across diverse demographics. What surprised you most about what students really want when they visit a university website? Grant, I'll start with you.
Big picture, what surprised me most is how much consistency there is across student segments, student types, and where they're at in the admissions cycle as well. And so when we collected the data, we cut it in 8, 9 different segmentation looks. We did it by student type, so traditional age undergraduate, non-trad undergraduate, and graduate. We did it by where they're at in the admissions process. Are they just collecting information? Are they applying? Are they enrolling? And then we did all the demographics: race, household income, GPA, international and domestic, and several others. And what was remarkable was how few statistically significant differences there were between these segments. And I'm sure throughout the course of the conversation, we will get into some of those meaningful differences, particularly between our student types: trad, non-trad, and graduate. That's where most of the differences were found. But when it comes to where they're at in the admission cycle, students who are collecting information are largely looking for the same information as students who are applying and as students who are enrolling. And there are some differences, like you might suspect, but by and large, there was a lot of common ground, which I think for higher ed marketers is probably a big weight off their shoulders, right?
Yeah, well, I don't think we have a lot of information we get that tells us, wow, we can focus on a few things that are universal to all, because a lot of what we talk about is segmentation and personalization and individualization, which feels very overwhelming. So we will take that win. Jarrett, anything to add there? Something that surprised you?
That was the biggest surprise to me as well. But as a marketer, where it's very trendy to talk about micro segments, and you hear people say things like segments of one. And what our data shows is no, like students are students, and there are important differences that we need to recognize, but they're relatively few in number. So if we can focus on that handful of things that really matter, then let's put our energy there, not stress too much about sending the perfectly individualized email or ad at the right time. Like, that's just a bar that truly isn't not necessary. And let's devote those resources and all that thinking to other areas where it can have a bigger impact.
Great. And so let's get into what are those top few things that are universal across that we can get our attention focused on.
I'll start with the admissions and aid portion of the website. And I think that's probably helpful for listeners to know is that we didn't look at the entirety of a university website, right? It's There's so much to look at. So we really felt
Well,
like we
that's
needed
fair.
to focus.
I don't think the entirety of the website is relevant to prospective students when we're serving so many different audiences.
Exactly. And so we kept that in mind, Allison, and we thought, well, okay, what are the things that maybe they are looking for most? And so we focused on admissions and financial aid on one hand, and we focused on academic program information on the other. And when it comes to admissions and aid, as you said at the outset, this probably isn't going to surprise many listeners, but cost information reigns supreme. And it was the top, Jarrett, correct me on the number here, but it was maybe 5 out of the top 7 most important tasks across.
It was actually 7 out of the top 8 admissions and aid tasks. Admission and aid tasks, yeah.
Even more so. I mean, and that manifested in multiple ways, right? There's the total cost of attendance. There's the estimated net cost after aid. But there was also things like, am I eligible for financial aid? The application fee waiver, payment plan options. I mean, cost emerged in so many different ways, but all there at the top. And so it just tells us that, what we already know to be true, which is that for so many prospective students, cost is the most important thing that they're looking for. What that means is how is that presented on your site? And I think that's really critical. I know we'll get into that, but those were some of the most important things as it relates to admissions and financial aid. Jarrett, maybe do you want to speak to what we found was most important on the academic program side of things?
Yeah, and so really it's a continuation of the theme on the academic side. The number one priority for prospective students from an academic standpoint is program-specific costs, which I think if you're a small...
So interesting, especially for the group that is undergraduates too in your study.
Yep. Yes. And that was also a bit surprising to us.
Yeah.
We thought it would be other things. I think for some institutions, that's not really a big deal. You have a pretty consistent tuition fee schedule. But for a large, say, comprehensive university that has many different degree levels and an extensive catalog of things, then finding those program-specific costs can be really problematic, very difficult to do. And so that's an area where I think there's a lot of potentially room for improvement for a particular slice of school to make that a lot easier to find. The second highest priority was program-specific financial aid, which I think Grant and I, when we presented on this, we said, this is a little bit of sometimes wishful thinking on the part of the students that there are like program-specific scholarships. They do exist, but again, relatively few number. And so that was the second one. And then if we're talking about students overall, unsegmented, the third highest task is around modality. Is this program going to be online or in person? And now that does change a bit. If we're talking traditional undergrads, they're less concerned with that, but we can get into the nuances of student type there.
I wonder if there's a takeaway here that's not website related when it comes to academic scholarships, program-specific academic scholarships. I wonder if it's worth testing whether or not students find merit scholarships that are named for the program that they're entering more appealing or more validating perhaps than a general presidential scholarship, which is a common one that most schools have. I wonder if that's something they're looking for.
I don't know, but you are sort of blowing my mind just by asking that question. Everything in my research experience suggests that would absolutely be appealing to prospective students. One of the things that we have found in our surveys of prospective students over time is the importance of their major in their decision-making process has gone up in the list of factors that they consider. And I think that's partly because of the pressure that we now place on return on investment and being more thoughtful about the program that you choose, being more disciplined, because sometimes that leads to shorter time to degree, right? That could be the difference between 4 or 5 years if you know what you want to study, but also then getting that return on investment on the back end as well in the salary that you can expect to make. And so all that is telling me is that a major is exceedingly important to our prospective students. And we know that
and perhaps
cost is
to their
exceedingly
identity.
important.
There's an self-identity thing linked in here.
Exactly. And we know that for many students, financial aid feels like the university values me this much, right? This is how much they want me to come here. When you go that one step further, it feels like This is how much they value me and my program choice. This is how much the
Yes.
program values me.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting strategy.
Like
I don't know
double
that I've seen that.
validation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I know it's not the topic we're on. We'll get back on the topic, but I thought that was an interesting thing. If anyone's done that, please let us know, because we would love to hear what results you've seen. Let's talk about what are some actions people can take around this idea of clarity around cost, those things that the students are looking for. Maybe start with, what do we typically see on a .edu site, and what should we be doing, or how should we be thinking about presenting that information?
So there are a couple of trouble spots. I do want to acknowledge that I think there are a ton of websites out there, a lot of EDUs that do a pretty good job with this, but we still see pretty frequently some real areas of opportunity. So I think from a website perspective, we need to just put ourselves in the shoes of that user and the little journey that they're on to find cost-related information. Number one, it's wayfinding on the site itself. So one thing that I see, and it seems to be a little more predominant in like small private colleges with a high sticker price, in their primary navigation, they don't have a clear link that goes directly to something like tuition and cost. They are trying to route students through financial aid first. And I think that's a real mistake. Students know you have a sticker price. They know there is a cost. And when you tuck it away on, this deep content page, you really force them to kind of play detective. I don't think that's a good look. I don't have any data on whether that, substantively undermines trust, but it does seem a little unnecessarily difficult that you're making. And then the other thing is, like, when they get there, can they decipher what they find? And that's a whole other sort of like set of considerations. So here, I really see it as like almost just a basic lack of customer service. We will do things like bullet out all the estimated tuition and fees and give them a million caveats and all that. But then we don't go the extra step of just adding it all up. Here's a total of all your estimated direct costs. Here's a total of all your estimated indirect costs. And here's all of it all added together. Sometimes they just get a bulleted list and they got to break out the calculator and decide, oh, does this particular fee probably apply to me? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Or we do something like present cost primarily in terms of cost per credit hour, and we lean heavily into that. And I think that can work for some students, like a transfer student. They know what cost per credit. A graduate student, they get it. This is not their first rodeo, potentially. When we frame it primarily in cost per credit hour, and then we just put a lot of work on them. And so when I talk to students about doing these types of tasks on a website, they are willing to put in the work. They will say, yeah, I'll break out the calculator and I'll add it all up, but I don't feel confident that I actually arrived at the right number.
Yeah.
And so I just need to talk to somebody.
I think framing that as customer service and sort of the user experience is helpful. If we go in with that lens, we're going to see these options, these opportunities for ourselves.
And, Allison, you touched on something earlier when you said, hey, this notion of program-specific financial aid, does it make me think about scholarships or the way we're framing these things differently? And I think a lot of what Grant and I walked away with as a result of this research was like, yes, it's about the website. And yes, it can give you like some empirical data that's very helpful. But it also just challenges some of our underlying assumptions about the way we typically do business. And I think it just can spark some interesting conversations and new thoughts that maybe we hadn't already had.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Foresight Tech was struggling to engage prospects promptly. Staff were overwhelmed and leads were slipping through the cracks. Then they brought in Element 451's Bolt agents. These AI-powered assistants stepped in to answer inquiries, send reminders, schedule visits, and route leads day or night. As a result, prospect to applicant conversion hit 25% within 3 weeks, and enrollment rose 12%. The impact? Counselors focused on high-value conversations, while Bolt agents handled the rest. Fast response, higher yield, happier staff. Support your counselors with 24/7 AI teammates. Try an agent today at element451.com/agents.
I want to talk about net price calculator because we all have to have them anyway, right? By law, we all have them, but they can be leveraged in different ways. But it sounds like your research found there's not a lot of interest around bothering with the NPC. Am I correct? What did you learn about the NPC?
What we learned was that finding the net cost, the estimated net cost, is certainly a priority, but students aren't recognizing the net price calculator as the way to get there.
That does that, yeah.
And by this point now, it's hard to chalk that up to the recency of the net price calculator, right? I mean, we've had these now on websites, government mandated for a decade.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think it's been about a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard to just attribute it to that. I think in some cases, it's the arcane way in which net price calculators are presented to prospective students. In other cases, I find that they're often pushed off to the side. The biggest thing is that it's one extra step. When you change the context, you change the outcome on some of these things. When you make it easier for people to find that information, they're more likely to get it. With something like this, providing an estimated net cost, even if it's an approximation and you have to qualify it with, the appropriate caveats around a student's individual situation, that to me is far more effective than just providing a link to a net price calculator and expecting students to use it.
Actually, it's what Sienna just went and did. What we just went and did as we read through your research, and that was one of our takeaways. So if anyone wants examples, feel free to go look at our cost of attendance page. Also, I will say, net price calculator, we don't get a lot of people, even when we've had it front and center, accomplishing it. No matter what, it requires information you might not have on hand about your family's finances. It's tough. But we do have a merit calculator that is very successful. And you'll see that on our website on sienna.edu if anyone wants to investigate too. That works really well. Let's move on to program pages. So we make sure we talk about that, because I definitely want to make sure we talk about the fact that part of this survey was higher ed professionals and what they thought students were trying to accomplish and what the gaps are there. So I want to get to that. But let's talk about the program pages. What are some of the practical information pieces that students are looking for that they might be finding hard to find, they might be missing often? What are those gaps that we can fill for the students on the academic program side?
We did talk about the universal stuff, regardless of student type, program tuition and fees, super important. So if you're one of those schools that, we've got a lot of different potential fee schedules here, I think it's really smart to link to that directly from the program page. So if you're in that context and you're in the mindset of like, how much is this PhD going to cost me? Let me just find it there. And if there's program specific aid, link to that too, because it's going to be top of mind. We also found that in general, students are, and Grant, I don't know if this was surprising to you, but it was surprising to me. They prioritize required courses and course descriptions and curriculum-related information higher than I thought they would.
The course description part blows my mind a little bit. Knowing what the classes are that you take and that major doesn't, but the actual description of them blew my mind a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think linking to that information and making that easy to find for the students that are motivated to do it. From there, I think then we start to get into more segment-specific differences. Like for our traditional students, one of the things that we found was that they really are a lot more keyed into answering that question, I think, on a gut level of, is this going to be worth it? I'm about to sign up for the most expensive, consequential decision of my young life. And what they want to see are career and success stories from graduates of the program, not just, hey, I went to this university and it was okay, it was worth it, but like in this program, what are economics majors doing here? And then the other one that really popped to the front that Grant and I were like, whoa, was student satisfaction with the program.
Yeah, that's so funny, because I think that with student satisfaction surveys, we mostly think about it institutionally and not programmatically. So that's a change that marketing alone can't solve. We have to find partners across campus to get answers that we can help illuminate those satisfaction levels for students. Yeah.
Yes. And if I can follow up on that point, this is something that I think is a huge missed opportunity in higher education marketing. I mean, think about any purchase decision you make, whether it is, which hotel you're going to stay at, which restaurant you're going to go to, whatever it may be. We look for reviews. We look for validation from our peers. And yet we don't provide those metrics for college, a massive decision for prospective students. And as Jarrett has pointed out elsewhere, if you don't provide that, they're going to find it somewhere else, right? They're going to go to Reddit. They're going to go to modern day, College Confidential, whatever it may be, to get those kinds of reviews. So you might as well proactively provide it if it's something that is an asset for you and your programs. One other bone I have to pick with this is that student satisfaction surveys are often run by institutional research, and the results are either only shared internally or are buried on 6 layers deep on an institutional research webpage. And the results are not presented in a way that leads to intuitive understanding. Right? I think when we talk about student satisfaction, it doesn't need to be that much more complicated than how many students would choose this program again if they could go back and do it. How many students would recommend this program to somebody else? Those are the metrics that you're looking for, right? Would you choose that again, and would you recommend it to somebody you know?
Which we should be focusing on anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
And
we should want to know that information and be striving to improve those metrics at all times.
That's right.
Anyway.
And I think we're starting to see that a little bit. Harvard Extension School, for instance, offers something like 10 to 20 different master's degrees. And right alongside tuition and the length of the degree, they provide the Net Promoter Score for that program, which is a remarkable development. It's the first time I've seen that, but I don't think it'll be the last.
That's a bold move.
Yes. Well, it's high.
Yeah. And it's and maybe risky too, because if you don't show it for one program and you do for another program, is it because you don't have the number or because the other program's not doing as well? And so the transparency can perhaps be a little bit risky. You also surveyed higher ed pros. And I want to talk about, did they get student priorities right? Did they not get student priorities right? What's the gap look like? And what's the risk of that gap that might exist?
So one of the things that we see from higher ed professionals is that there's sort of an orientation toward a traditional student mindset for what they think prospective students are looking for. So it might just reflect, their own experience or the audiences that they are most likely to be targeting. But the way that emerges is that certain things like the admissions application portal, application deadlines, and in-person campus visit options were things that higher ed professionals thought would be top tasks for prospective students and actually weren't. I think one way of thinking about this, and Jarrett has sort of helped evolve my own thinking on this too, is that it's not that the deadlines are unimportant. It's not that you need to take off access to the application portal, right, from your admissions site. It's just that those things aren't frequently the top thing that prospective students are going to your site to accomplish.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I'll get to it when I need it, right?
Yes.
When I'm ready to apply, then I will access it.
It's that universal across all the moments in the search
Exactly.
process. Yeah.
Exactly. But the reverse implication of that is if we prioritize those things at the expense of other information that prospective students are looking for, then we're missing an opportunity to serve up that critical information, whether it be about cost, whether it be about programs, whether it be about modality or something else.
This research, by the way, the report is so extensive and in-depth. We will definitely be linking to it in the show notes so you can all dive in. They've made it available for everybody, so be sure to look at that. I want to bring it home by talking about the fact that this study focused on websites, but even as we've just chatted in the last 20 minutes or so, the takeaways go way beyond that. So let's wrap it up by talking about how these insights can inform enrollment marketing, recruitment strategy. What are your ideas around that? What are some of the takeaways for those of us doing this work? What can we extract from this, not just about the website, but for informing our work and doing our work more effectively?
Allow this research to make you question your assumptions and to spark a conversation, like payment plans, something we didn't really talk about a lot in the interview, but as a feature is kind of prominent in our presentation on this and in the report. When I share the results on payment plans with enrollment leaders and admissions folks, sometimes they get a little like furrowed brow or crinkled nose, and they're like, "Really?" And sometimes the answer is, "Well, our business office does that, but," and then you hear these like, "Here's why I don't think this is a thing," and it's like, I think you're kind of missing the point. It's like our students. This struck a nerve with our students. What is it telling us? And maybe what we're doing through our business office today could be better. Maybe it's the report doesn't have like the answer served up on a silver platter. It just says, hey, this is a thing, and allow that to spark some curiosity and maybe have some conversations. I think same thing with like total cost of attendance, allow that to maybe spark a conversation about how are we doing and what do prospective students think about it when they see that on our website. For me, that is probably the deeper finding or thing that came out of it naturally for me.
Grant, how about one, maybe a low lift, high impact action someone on an enrollment team could take
Yes.
right now?
If you are responsible for marketing to either non-traditional undergraduates or graduate students, do not downplay the importance of the practical information and putting that up front and center. Things like cost, time to degree, average weekly time commitment as well. That was something that emerged. The modality of the program. Far too often this information is buried or even not available. And by putting it front and center, you give your prospective students the information they need to know right off the bat to determine if this is even a program that's viable for them, and then allow them to learn the more intimate details of your program from there, right? Whether it is course descriptions or what separates this from other options, that type of thing. Faculty, for instance. But they need that filtering information up front first to be able to make an informed choice.
Jarrett, Grant, thank you so much, not just for being on the show, but for doing this research and sharing it so widely with all of us. It's really important.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. It's been fun.
And if you're listening, ask yourself, is your website helping students do what they came to do? And if not, what's the first task you're going to fix? If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
Thanks for listening to The Application. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where Higher Ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and so much more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.